Thank you and welcome to the program. To those who are just joining us and those who have been on, thank you for staying with us. I have some people here who have tweeted about the situation in the country. Some say we are the problem.
Oh, how so?
Someone says, what are you guys on about this morning? That the entire concept of leadership to provide leadership be thorough. He says we should be thorough in our thinking. Please don't get us wrong. Leadership is not about position. It's about you taking responsibility for where you are. The president, we've not said the president will not address the country. We've not said it is right the president is not addressing the country or it is wrong. We've not said that. Please mark the words we used. We chose our words carefully. Okay? And then the fact that people who are living below $2 a day and then cannot afford sanitizers, we can also share sanitizers. I mean, we shared sanitizers here in the office and in some other place. Some people are going around sharing sanitizers to their neighbors. I know my neighbors going around. My family is also sharing sanitizers to our neighbors, as many as cannot afford to get a sanitizer. Be our brother's keeper. That's what we're saying. Each person lead from where you are while we're waiting for the leadership of the country to address us. But, so today.
Yes. Well, we can't stop talking about COVID-19, can we? And it's spreading widely. And of course, you're aware that the WHO has described it as a pandemic, which means it is a global problem. And as this is happening and we have more confirmed cases in Nigeria, I think Nigeria says that we have 12 of them now. Activities in Nigeria are moving towards a lockdown. And for this reason, the government is doing all things possible to contain this virus and also deal with its impact on the economy. One of the measures is the slash in the 2020 budget by 1.5 trillion. But the question is, how will this slash really affect the economy and affect our lives? That and many questions we're going to put to our team this morning. And the team is made up of an economist, Mr. Bongo Adi. Good morning.
Good morning.
And also in Lagos, we have Mr. Tayo Ojuri, who is an aviation consultant.
Good morning.
And joining us from Abuja, we have Mr. Tokwe Fashua, an economist. Hi, Tokwe, good to see you.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Morning.
Yes. Now, let me start with the economist we have in the house here. They say that a bird in hand is worth God knows how many in the bush. Mr. Adi is right here with us. So let me put this question to you directly. How do you think that this slash in the budget is going to help stabilize anything?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer because, I don't know, the slash and then you're talking about stabilization. That's a contradiction in terms, isn't it?
Okay. How is it going to help? Help.
You're slashing the budget and then you are still talking about stabilization.
No, there's no stabilization,
It's a source of instability, of course. Anyway, I don't think it is up to the government to determine what happens, So this is clearly, a reflection of the state of the economy, the foundations of our economy, the macroeconomic foundation. So all the talks, there is this Igbo proverb. Sorry, I have to take you there. It says, the translation is that if not that we the men follow our women to the yam farm, they would have come back to tell us that the god of yam, Ahiajoku, told them to greet us. So this is what we call a collateral damage. It's a covariate risk. So not idiosyncratic. It's not something that affects any particular company or individual or any region of the country. So it's international, and then that has immediately exposed the precariousness of the Nigerian economy. Everybody knows that a call on Nigeria's economy is a call on oil. So everything is on oil price. So now that has, of course, the same thing that happened in 2016 has repeated. It has exposed our government for what it is. It is vacuous, it is empty, it is, it doesn't have the backbone to determine anything. So it is not up to the government to decide what happens. everything is based on the oil price. I once asked students in the class, if you're making a budget for your household or for your company, would you base your budget on something that is as volatile as oil price? Of course, everybody said no. It's a random variable. And what are the characteristics of a random variable? The major characteristics of a random variable is that you cannot predict what the outcome will be until it has happened. So why would you base your budget, your life? You can't bet your life on something that is unpredictable.
That you have no control over.
You have no control over it, and it is unpredictable. So no rational person does that. But unfortunately, Nigeria is an irrational enterprise, and the government has operated it as one. So that is all we can say about that.
Okay. Let me take it to Tokwe. We're still staying with the economy. We'll come back. We'll come back to you, Mr. Aviation. Tokwe, all this is painting a rather bleak picture, as far as I am concerned. Should I be worried as a Nigerian?
Yes, actually, well, unfortunately, I would say yes, you have to be worried. Perhaps everybody on earth at this moment needs to be worried. This morning, I was reading up on some articles. Globally, there's a prediction of about 12% drop in the global GDP. That is straight on economic depression, all right? The last time the world had a global economic depression, which we call the Great Depression, was between 1930 and 1939. And in fact, the world had to go into a world war in order to pull out of that sometime around 1944 to 1945. Basically, was when the world could, quote unquote. But all of that actually happened around the USA into Europe. But this time around, it's a little bit more, it's far more spread out than that. Nigeria itself, the economy is meant to grow at 2% only this year. But with the shortings that we're expecting, that we have actually begun to see in every sector of the economy, especially the crude oil sector. This morning I checked the price of crude oil. Our Brent crude's trading at about 27, 28.
I do beg your pardon, Mr. Fashua.
It's trading at 27.
Mr. Fashua, I beg your pardon. Can you just hold that thought? We need to go on a short break now. When we come back, you'll continue with that train of thought.
Yetunde Oluide is proud of her gift shop, which she has run in bustling Lagos for nearly a decade. But now, with Chinese supply chains broken by coronavirus closures, she is losing more than 2 million naira a month.
For the past 2 months, we've not been able to ship in anything. A lot of our products are sold out. We need to restock because we have a high demand for it, but we can't do anything because the suppliers are not open, the warehouses are not open, the logistics company are not open, for health and safety reasons, which we all understand. So we are in between selling what we have now, waiting for the virus to totally clear out so everybody gets to work.
China's economic health is also crucial for oil prices, which make up more than half of Nigeria's government revenues and have tumbled more than 20% since January. Falling oil revenues, disrupted supply chains, and the threat of coronavirus spreading within Nigeria threatens to affect growth in its economy and boost borrowing costs just as it plans to return to the Eurobond market. Financial analyst Mukhtar Mohammed warned that if the virus shutdowns start to impact Chinese-backed projects, the monetary value of that cannot be quantified.
You look at the Ray project, you look at the airport terminal, new airport terminal project, you look at the Mambila Plateau project, the power sector project. So it's just basically all our infrastructural projects will come to a standstill. And again, the monetary value of that cannot be quantified.
Nigeria confirmed its first coronavirus case 2 weeks ago, and local stock markets plunged, wiping some 300 billion naira off its market cap. If the virus spreads and workers and shoppers stay at home, much needed revenue from a higher VAT rate passed last year will evaporate. Nigeria has arguably taken bigger hits, but its depleted buffers and shaky exit from a 2016 recession, with growth around 2%, could make this time tougher. Moody's, which downgraded Nigeria's outlook in December, warned this week that its debt, which has ballooned to 26 trillion naira, made it particularly vulnerable to external shocks. Last week, S&P also downgraded Nigeria, citing declining external reserves. It could increase Nigeria's borrowing costs as it plans $3 billion in new Eurobond offerings. The yield of Nigeria's $2049 bond rose by 1 percentage point from mid-February to end February as the coronavirus roiled global markets.
CBN has taken a very active, positive step to provide a basis for restructuring finance that's given to very vulnerable sections of the economy through their anchor program. So SMEs, companies that invest in pharmaceuticals and healthcare, to encourage them to invest in healthcare facilities. I think they should be commended for doing so. There's some thought as to whether those palliatives should be extended to other sectors and make them a bit more system-wide.
Because the problem we are dealing with is macroeconomic in nature. It's a system-wide problem. So whatever responses we are bringing to the table must have a macroeconomic outlook, a macroeconomic mindset. So while this is good, we need to look beyond that and look at something that is more systemic. Because, we are talking about issues that are affecting the macroeconomic fundamentals. We are talking about oil price. We are talking about oil output. We are talking about exchange rates. We are talking about reserves. These are fundamental issues. Giving credit will not solve that kind of problem, but it can enable one or two businesses to be able to adjust, improve their liquidity and all.
Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Fashua, you were telling us exactly why we should be worried as Nigerians in these trying times.
Yes, thank you very much. So basically, we know what the issues are. The crude oil is where it is, and of course, that affects government funding. Unfortunately, the government has had to cut the budget by 1.5 trillion. Unfortunately, because, like I've always insisted, that budget itself, ab initio, was never enough. Budget is 1/6 of what they do in South Africa, even half or a third of what they do in Egypt or Algeria. However, that's what it is. Now, this is a global problem, like I think I heard Mr. Muda saying just now. It's a global problem. It's just not just a Nigerian issue, but there are some peculiarities that makes it a bit tough for Nigeria, apart from the issue apart from the crude oil price fall. Also, that our economy is largely informal. Unlike what they have done in parts of Europe and parts of the United States and so on, can we shut down this economy? Most of our people, they earn their daily bread on a daily basis, In other parts of the world, some governments have said, okay, you know what, if companies don't open, we're going to pay you a certain amount of money. In fact, some governments have actually committed to paying every individual in the country a certain amount of money. That is not possible in Nigeria, as far as I know. Again, we also, we were on the verge of borrowing these $22.7 billion from the world, different places in the world. $17 billion of that was going to come from China, which now has a bigger fish to fry. What do we do? So if we're not careful, we're looking at a major economic crisis on our hands. And my fear is that the economic issues and the fallouts of the economic quagmire may actually end up devastating people a little bit more than the disease, So, however, I want to also quickly say that wherever we can find hope, we should give hope. And I've been on the vanguard of actually putting out, messages of hope to our people because, hey, we can't crawl into a corner and all die, I hope that our people will be able to throw everything they can at this disease as it's coming so that, as against what has been predicted, we won't have people falling dead on the streets. We hope that we want to see messages of how many people are recovering from this disease, for example. We want to see messages from WHO. I was looking at their app this morning. We want to see messages of, how people can boost their immunity, not just to say, okay, everybody should crawl into their houses and shut down for 6 weeks or 4 weeks, or as the case may be. Our economic structure is fundamentally different from what obtains abroad, and that's where you find the fact that some economies have been a lot better managed than others, unfortunately.
But
Most of the black African, sub-Saharan African economies, sans South Africa, are totally, largely informal, and therefore you can't actually lock people up for so long without actually starving them to death.
all right, okay. But let me come back here and bring it to you, Mr. Ojiri. Yes, we've talked about the issue of the government cutting down the budget and how that's affecting infrastructure. But you're an aviation expert, and today is like the deadline for flights coming in from certain countries into Nigeria. So, in other words, and some airports have already been shut down.
That's correct.
So basically, movement is gone. Some countries have completely closed out any entry from any country whatsoever. What can be done? Is this the right move? And what can be done differently?
Well, unfortunately, on the aviation aspect, we'd actually gotten a cold before this happened. Because earlier, when we had the late Harmattan haze, we had the instrument landing system issues where flights were diverted to Accra, Abuja, Dakar, and Benin Republic. That affected us. We barely got out of that when we started the issues of corona being transmitted through flights. And with that now, we actually have the restriction which you rightly talked about. At midnight today, it starts. We have 13 countries on the restriction ban. Most of the European flights are going to be cancelled for 4 weeks. NCAA has confirmed they're going to review that after 2 weeks. However, lots of jobs are going to be lost. It's not going to affect just aviation, but all the ancillary services, the ground handling services, the jet for A1 fuel suppliers, the in-flight catering people, all those, and even the direct, indirect, and catalytic economic impact of this. To your other leg of the question, you did ask, is this the right time? Yes, some say it has come too late. Because aviation indeed is the fastest means of transportation. We realize those that came to Nigeria from those core areas where they had the challenges. So should we have shut down earlier? From my point of view, I didn't think so. We should have just put restrictions in place whereby port health, quarantine, and lots of health, basic health hygiene initiatives that would have reduce the issue. But now that it's what it is, I heard from the Honorable Minister of Aviation's tweet this morning that even though we have 3 airports closed, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Kano, Lagos and Abuja are still open for now. We might eventually close Lagos and Abuja.
That closure, some are concerned that it should have also affected the local flights as well, because moving from one state to the other, someone might have come into Lagos and then is now moving to another state via flight. Do you think that should also be included?
We have peculiarities in our system. Yes, it should be. But look at Italy had a total lockdown of the Lombardy area. We cannot afford to shut down the economy. Like Dr. rightly said, our economy is sustainability is daily sustenance. Mm-hmm. If you shut down just Lagos State, it's going to affect Lagos sneezes, the whole country catches a cold. You find out all the other, we cannot just take what has been done elsewhere and that's integrated into Nigeria. What are the other factors that would affect us? So to your point, yes, we should actually ensure that those that are traveling ensure that they're well tested, have a history. And again, we have issues with data and being honored, or the honor system. Those are the challenges we have. But having said that, is having even the structure being the transparent platform where people can actually report when they are not feeling well.
In parentheses, how safe is it for people to fly right now in that pressurized cabin? I mean, if I'm carrying the virus and I sneeze inside a plane, are the other passengers safe?
Yes, they are. Because what you have, even before this time, there are lots of infographics and lots of communication being sent out at this time by the airlines. So we have the infographics. Apart from being sanitized, the air is purified from time to time. and all the touching parts, the toilets, and all the parts you can touch or that of common touch to the passengers are cleaned from time to time and sanitized. There's no perfect area. Even the hospitals are not safe. So it's just to ensure that we keep the basic hygiene, which helps us stay safe.
Mr. Adi, shutting down the economy is a no-no. Restrictions is a yes, yes. Self-awareness is a yes, yes, doubly yes, so. But then, and Tokwe mentioned this, where the economy hasn't been what it is, and then this came on and it's like a bang on it. There are those who argue that the question should have been answered around the monetary and fiscal policy of our economic system that never really came together. So that's the situation now. What can be done, or what should be done now?
Well, it's a very difficult situation for every economy, for every economic manager or planner all over the world. We know what is going on in the United States. It's not even easy in the #1 economy in the world. So the government of the United States is under serious pressure. Yesterday, I think they are running out of supplies in the hospitals, and then the president has declared that he's a wartime president. So they are treating it as a wartime situation in the United States. So back home in Nigeria, this is where government intervention is most needed. You know, unfortunately, we've allowed the politics to dictate much of what happened in the economy for too long. Especially with the exchange rate, a lot of money has been spent trying to defend the naira, but now that it can be done, so the market forces have been allowed to take effect. So meaning that what the government had avoided all these years has been forced on them. So supposing that they took the hard decision to deregulate the foreign exchange market, in the past, perhaps there could have been enough savings, and then there would have been some kind of fiscal buffer.
But what do we do now?
So that is it. I mean, there's a limit to what the government can do because, again, we do not have all the information. How strong is the government's fiscal buffer is to support the real sector of the economy? Because whether we like it or not, everybody's getting hit. Like Tobe said, in some other countries, they've come up with some palliative measures to support industries, to support even individuals, paying individuals who will be out of job for the next 30 days, 1 month, paying them salaries 80%, as the UK said, because they are shutting down the pubs, the restaurants, the bars in the UK. So the workers will be paid 80% of their salaries. So this is a largely informal system. So many people are not within any known payroll system that you could monitor and pay. But having said that, we need to understand that even though the informal system doesn't have a life of its own in Nigeria, so everything depends again on the formal system. So it is only the transmission mechanism when the money has come into the hands of the formal sector workers, they're able to now instigate demand in the informal setting. If the formal sector workers do not have monies, do not have salaries to spend, then they don't have disposable income, then there is not much happens in the informal system. So what can government do to support, to help out workers and companies who have been forced to shut down? Before now, so many organizations have taken on their own decisions, to shut down operations, to save their workers. So they're going to lose revenue, definitely. So meaning that unlike what has happened in the past, the Anchor Borrowers program, I think that is even under probe right now because the bulk of the money, around 50 billion or so, have not been accounted for. So if we follow the same process, it means that the money will fritter away, it won't get to the right people.
So what do we do?
So it's a difficult situation because...
Is there nothing that can be done?
It's difficult because we don't have the system.
All right, Tokwe. Let's look at what can be done in the situation we're in right now. What can be done to salvage a little bit of the economy? As you said, you're putting out messages of hope, but what can be done to salvage the economy for the nation so that there'll be some little bit of hope also as well?
And Tokwe also.
Right, thank you. As Dr. Bongo Adi said, of course, it's a tough scenario. Let me even make the scenario a little bit more difficult. The GMD of an NPC says if crude oil price gets to $22, that Nigeria is out of business. That was the message, the language he used. Some of the baskets of crude oil around the world, the ones that are a little bit inferior to Nigeria's Brent crude burning light, is actually right now trading at $18. Equally, the West Texas Index is trading at about $21 right now. So it could get a lot worse. So now, what do we do? A few suggestions have been made. For example, for example, there's 41 million MSMEs in Nigeria, according to Smedan. 41 million micro, small, medium enterprises in Nigeria. And that forms the bulk of employers in this country. The government, unfortunately, has mismanaged resources over time, and therefore we don't have money to reach out to all of those people. In fact, that's not even on the card. Some people have said, okay, fine, if it comes to a day that we can't even sell crude oil, that it doesn't make sense for us to produce anymore, what do we do? Do we print and spend? When you print and spend, what you're going to have is high inflation and a stagnant economy. That's stagflation. Now, another thing we could do, which I've also suggested, is because I've been inside markets. Sometimes I go into the markets around Abuja here. I like to interact with market people. I was there last Sunday. I realized that even the social distancing thing may not work here because of the way we are, And, the idea behind social distancing is that in the UK, most people get their groceries from Tesco or from Costco or from Lidl or all those kind of places. And in the US, they get it from Walmart. But here, our market is that open market, local, traditional market that we've always been used to, where people go there to make 200, 300, 500 naira every day. So you have to tell yourself some basic truths. Number one, I'm saying, let us begin to continue to educate our people how they can get their immunity up. Of course, social distancing as much as possible, but that's more common among the middle class people. Even things like washing of hands, very important. But in many places, they don't even have the water, the clean water. Sometimes the water they have, you're going to end up reinfecting yourself. I'm also saying that, look, if we can find local remedies to our flu, our cold, because at the end of the day, this is actually a cold. Unfortunately, Africa should have been stepping out to say, hey, we have our researchers and there are some things we have in Africa here that can help solve this global problem. But since we haven't done that, at least from an individual perspective, we can do everything we can to protect ourselves. Lastly, I would want to say that my thinking about all the variables involved in this matter, I would have wanted a scenario where Nigeria tries to find its strength at this moment. One of the first things that happened in India when this problem started, and luckily for India, they've been able to protect themselves. They have about 250 cases out of 1.3 billion people, which is great, and despite the fact they're very close to China. But one of the first things they did was they first of all stopped the export of pharmaceuticals. It's going to, God forbid, it comes to a point where even pharmaceutical products for all that kind of diseases that people are used to having here, we can't even find them anymore. So how are we incentivizing our pharmaceutical sector? How are we incentivizing other sectors? How are we ensuring that we push as far as possible not to shut down the economy? Because again, the structure of the economy is different from what they have out there. We're talking about now how this economy can reboot itself from within. If we crawl and shut down this economy, the effect is going to be a lot more devastating on us than anywhere else, because we're talking about mass layoff. For example, you don't have plans for the 41 million MSMEs. That means that I run a couple of them. The point is to tell my staff to all go home. And what happens? Okay,
we really have to.
In the UK.
Thank you, Tokwe. Mr. Ojiri, you, in your closing statements, because you have to go. Okay, Idibia, or Imadibia, says restriction on the airlines of hotspot countries is commendable, but if it was placed when Nigeria had only 3 COVID cases, the emergencies of school closures and other restrictions wouldn't have occurred. FG's delay, because of diplomatic sentiment, caused this panic. But now, what can be done? Tokwe has outlined some things that can be done towards boosting the economy of individuals and the society general, but what else can be done?
Well, I stay on the optimistic side, and we have the population going for us. We have agriculture. We have strategic partnership. When a recession starts, as the economists know it, yes, there's the share capital that goes down or the share market that goes down, but there's the funds does not dissipate in thin air. So people are just wary about when to spend and how to spend. If we have the right policies, we are able to reassure investors to come and invest. I'm talking particularly for the aviation sector. Strategic partnership, it's able to boost that, and we're able to start from where we are.
Bongo. Your passing shot.
Yeah, my passing shot is that some palliatives need to be put in place, which would be cutting down on some of these, costs that people have to bear, like rents. I've read that some governments have mandated some landlords to cut down some rents. So tax should also be something to be looked into. Finding some
What about remuneration?
to support firms, to take care of these situations, because now the income revenues will not be coming. So government should need to find a way to support some of those companies so that they can keep paying wages to workers.
But government itself doesn't have any money.
Well, that's where the problem is. You see why I was talking about the difficulty? But I think there is still some bit of money left. Nobody's talking about the SS crude account. I don't know if anything is left of it. Okay, and then there's some very wet fund. Nobody's talking about that. So whatever they have, anything, they should just mobilize it to make sure that people, are kept
Stay alive.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Bongo Adi, an economist who was in our studio in Lagos, as well as Mr. Tayo Ujuri, an aviation consultant, and Mr. Tokwe Fasho, an economist who joined us from our studio in Abuja. There's never enough time, because I'm sure there's still more that people wanted to ask from the tweets that were coming in. Thank you very much all the same. Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do join us.